So there's been a huge amount of talk about election posters, as you know, the local town election's only a few weeks away, and same with the European election. And just to say before anything, and before I go any further, regardless if you're, so-called far right, so-called far left, whatever, uh, regardless of who you are going for the European Parliament, the local authority, you have your right to have your posters on a lamp post on whatever. Nobody should be interfering with them. Obviously, in the feds to interfere with an election poster. So you shouldn't interfere with them. It's not right to interfere with somebody's poster because at the end of the day, that's democracy. You might not like the person that's won for. Like I don't like the main Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Sinn Féin and the Labour Party. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't go out and take their posters down because at the end of the day, the members, if there's another person down the street who wants to vote for the Labour Party, at the end of the day, that's their right and that's democracy. And the same as having posters on the side of the road. That's democracy. People have a right to. You can't just silence one side of it. Either be the right or the left. You can't just silence somebody because again, that's what democracy is. You can't just take down somebody and remove the fight stick or something. We get into the second another thing in relation to posters. But what I say to people, if you have a problem with somebody on a poster or if you don't agree with the poster, whatever it may be, just walk the other way. Just walk to the other side of the street. Just ignore the poster. Like at the end of the day, it's not hard to ignore. It isn't hard to ignore. So I just say to people, just please look the other way. Just don't pass any remarks. Like nowadays, people have off a habit just you know getting very annoyed over posters and stuff. Years ago, we would just walk the other side of the street. Because at the end of the day, it's only a post. At the end of the day, it's not going to make much of a difference. It's not going to win the election for somebody, and it's not going to achieve victory or whatever. It might maybe sway a few people's votes, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really. It only really shows you that you're going for the election, etc., etc. But long story short, at the end of the day, this is the main point I want to get across: that nobody should be interfering with any kind of election post, even though I disagree immensely with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael posters or whatever. Like with the party itself, not with the posters itself, but with the party itself. I deem them as sold the country down the water many times, and Sinn Féin's none the better. But still, at the end of the day, they have a right to have their posters up. It's their democratic right. Uh, Nobody has really the right to take them down, to be totally honest. Unless, of course, there is some limitations. Obviously, you can't have election posters or roundabouts, take for example, because it's the law, because obviously it can be a dangerous thing. And different things, it has to be up a certain that you can't just have it so low down to the ground, etc., etc. There's different regulations, but I'm sure, again, that's the law. And it can be taken down in that regard by officials of the council. In that regard, but not by only members of the public, just to say. Now, the next discussion, I suppose, on election posters is the effectiveness. Are they effective? Do they sway public opinion to vote for a certain candidate? And maybe years ago, back even 10 years ago, maybe, it would have had a difference. It might have actually encouraged people to vote, etc., etc., for that candidate. But not so much nowadays, because we have social media. Like, take, for example, here now, I could literally go 5 seconds, look up who's the candidates for this area, who's the European candidates, etc., etc. And it only take 5 seconds, and that's the beauty of social media, I suppose, that the information is there instantaneous nearly, compared to election posters. I do have a story relating to election posters now in a second, but so I don't deem them as effective. As I say, I was planning to run for the local authority here in Cavan Talbot this year, but I didn't obviously. But I wasn't going to have any posters at all because obviously they're not good for the environment. Just having thousands of posters just plopped up on poles, and it's not tidy too. Just having hundreds of poles clattered with posters everywhere. I don't agree with that. I know some people disagree with me. I know I sound like such a Green Party member, but I assure you I'm not in with him and I know anything like that. But it's not good for the environment because obviously them posters are made out of plastic, and a lot of them, and I've seen it myself, ended up in the dump after the election, straight after the election, just in the dump into a landfill to rot away in the landfill. And not even that, just as with terms of litter and stuff like that, I could show you, I could tell you 50 stories of posters that have been found in ditches and shocks 10 years later. In some cases, a few years after the elections. Like we found going back 5 months ago, there was an election poster found for the last election, for the last local, no, well, not local county, like it was what they call the government election, like the all elections. There was a poster found for Deputy Neve Smith, take for example. That was found 5 months ago from 2020 or that time when the general election happened. So that was just found 5 months ago, just at the end before Christmas there last year. And just goes to show they are still in ditches and they're in shocks, and probably in some cases at on the bottom of rivers and lakes. So it's not good for the environment, just because again there's only like a majority of posters, if you look at them, and they only have cable ties on them, very cheap cable ties, which are easily are cut out if there's a gust of wind, any kind of gust of wind, or if a board tricks at them or whatever. Because I've seen boards tricking at them too. It could easily fall down and blow away in the wind. It actually could easily do it, and I've seen it happen. We've seen it happen many times. But yeah, I just want to explain, talk about the story actually here when I'm here. Relating to election posters, etc., etc., and that a lot of members of the public too, and I suppose in a way election posters too are good for the ordinary Joes who don't pay much attention to politics, who don't give a shit basically about the politicians, etc. Majority of people don't, but the ordinary Joe who has a life and stuff, has a working life, has children, etc., doesn't have time to hear what every politician's saying on the local radio. Obviously, I know what every politician's up to, etc., etc., because I watch them what they do. I watch every inch of what the local politicians did in the last council election, like the last councillors, etc., etc. I know what their game is, etc., etc., because I do pay attention to what they're doing. And the same with TDs, etc. I pay attention, but there's some people that just don't get into politics, don't bother to interfere, like get involved basically, and just want to live their life without being interfered with. So a funny interaction I had the other day. So a sitting Fine Gael councillor in Cavan, I'm not going to name the person. But I happened just to go by. Obviously, I knew she was there. I went by. I knew she was there. I was walking at the time, picking bits of rubbish. And a sitting councillor was there. Obviously, she would know who I am, and obviously she was retired too. So obviously, wish her the best in retirement. But long story short, she was at a bus stop there in the town, and there was a young woman there with a child, about maybe 3 years old, right? And this young woman would be about 26, something like that. I don't know, 27. But anyway, long story short, she was out with a leaflet because her daughter's running for canvassing, like running for the local elections here, for the local authority. I can't speak, but long story short, she gave it to the one, and the sitting councillors that has been there since the 90s. Just to say, 1994 was the first time she was elected to the council, so probably 30 years. And this woman, and she's lived all her life in Ireland, because I heard her saying to the councillor, I've lived all my life here. Like she is Irish, she's an Irish woman, she's a Cavan woman, she is. The councillor said to her, do you not know who I am? And she was like, I never seen you in my life. And it was actually very funny. And my name is such the councillor. And she's like, no, I don't know you. Who are you? The woman was like, oh, right, I don't really care. To be done, more or less. But long story short, imagine being there since the 90s, or no, probably before she was born. No, if she's 26 or something, that's the estimate. But she's in her late 30s or early 30s, something around that range. But she had a young daughter, etc., etc. But again, when you have a young daughter and stuff like that, there's not much time to pay to politicians, etc., etc. But it was funny. Because the majority of young people don't know who the politicians are, they don't know who the local councillors, they couldn't tell you. Some people couldn't actually even tell you who the Taoiseach was, let's put it that way, and who the president was. Again, a lot of people just have lost faith in politics, but that's just a perfect example, I suppose, too, why election posts. But a lot of people just don't pass any remarks on. Like that Fine Gael candidate for the last 30 years has been on polls around here and getting elected. And it's mainly the old vote that we're getting, because it's not the young vote. Because the majority of young people just moved away and gone. They're not going to vote here again because they've moved off to another country. And that's probably the sad reality of this woman too. Eventually she probably will have to move. Even though, it was funny to see, because I knew who she was as a councillor. And she knew who knows who I am. So it was funny. So she didn't even attempt to try and say vote Fine Gael to me. Because, I could go into many details on why Fine Gael. I wouldn't be voting Fine Gael. But still, at the end of the day, she has a right to go and canvass, on the streets, etc., etc. The same as every candidate to have a right to canvass. It's the democratic right. Regardless if I agree with Fine Gael, at the end of the day, they're entitled to go around the same as you or me. Nobody has the right to really stop them. And that's the thing. As long as they're not going around punching people or something like that, then that goes into criminality. But but long story short, it was a funny interaction. I wish I probably caught it on camera, but I probably wouldn't, because we wouldn't want to just put a young woman with a child on social media, etc., etc. We don't want to do that. Especially because I was nearby at the time. I wasn't directly involved in the conversation. So we kind of buttoned in, I suppose, in a way. But it was funny to see. It was funny to see, and probably many characters like that. Like, who are you? I never seen you in my life. After been 40 years as a councillor, it just goes to show you. But again, my case is that it doesn't really make much difference if you're 50 years on the pole. With election posters, nobody really, young people don't really care about them, particularly young people. That's just the way I see it. But anyway, that's just a story I had the other day. I talk more about it in my live stream when we're live tomorrow. But yeah, let me know what you think about election posters, but nobody should be interfering with them. That's just my opinion. Thank you.